just me. It's just me today. Um, no one's joining. It's just me. I'm gonna be on here all by myself. Hopefully, you're not sad about that. I'm David. Just give me 1 second. I'll introduce myself and get started. I'm penning a message for the group. But as I type, I guess I can introduce myself. I could do two things at once. I am David Wilson. I've been with Whitman-Walker for about a year now, actually. I am a social media influencer with the community help team. So what we do is go on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and kind of promote community health events, provide information. And so that's what I'm doing here. Again, my name is David. My pronouns are he, him, his. But I'm not offended if you say she. I'm not one of those folks. So whatever makes you comfortable makes me comfortable. Yeah, so as soon as I get done typing this, we'll jump in. Hey, Lando, thanks for joining. I miss you, buddy. Hope everything has been going well. I miss seeing people's faces. Lando, we have to do a live together really soon. All right, I'm almost done. All right. So today's topic is about Women's History Month. So I'm super excited, and I have to shamelessly say, full of shame, say that I haven't celebrated Women's History Month in the past, but I am super happy to begin this tradition for myself this year. So it's really good that I have this opportunity to start this journey with you all and share some information. I did a little research about Women's History Month, so I'll be able to share some information. So, hello. Finally got the comment pen. That took longer than I thought. So, let's get started. So, over the last few months, Whitman-Walker's community health team has expanded its outreach efforts to social media. So we cover various topics that could be from HIV, STI, sexual health practices, access to care, social determinants of health, and general public health interventions. Our series of outreach sessions also focus on the current pandemic, COVID-19, and ways that you can manage your sexual, personal, and mental health. Our community health team is always here to help. We're here to educate. We're here to support. Just know that we're here for you. So last week, I actually talked about the importance of celebrating Black History Month beyond the month of February, which I think is extremely important. I definitely encourage you all to either revisit my live if you can. I actually don't think you can because I had an issue posting it. But I encourage you all to expound upon your celebrations of Black History Month outside the month of February. But today I want to bring the focus to talk about Women's History Month. So March is the second day of March, and March is Women's History Month, which is a time when we as a country can celebrate the achievements of women and recognize their central role in U.S. history. So Women's History Month had its origin as a national celebration in 1981 when Congress actually passed a public law that authorized and requested the president at that time to proclaim the week. So it started off as a week, beginning March 7, 1982 as Women's History Week. Throughout the next 5 years, Congress continued to pass these resolutions, each year designating a week in March as Women's History Week. In 1987, which is actually the year I was born, fun fact, after being petitioned by the National Women's History Project, Congress actually passed another public law which designated the entire month of March in 1987 as Women's History Month. So we actually got Women's History Month the year I was born, 1987. Between 1988 and 1994, Congress actually passed additional resolutions requesting and authorizing the president to proclaim March of each year as Women's History Month. Since 1995, presidents have issued a series of annual proclamations designated the month of March as Women's History Month. These proclamations celebrate the contributions of women contributions that women have made to the United States and recognize their specific achievements over the course of American history in a variety of fields. So I actually want to share a little bit of a knowledge about some of these women who've played an incredible role in, the shaping of America today. So as we step into the month of March, I hope that you all start thinking about those women, in women's history, from whether it be like Abigail Adams or Susan B. Anthony, one of my favorites, Sojourner Truth, and another one of my favorites, Rosa Parks. Like, all these people contribute to the timeline of women's history, and it actually stretches back to the founding of the United States. Also within the month of March, we commemorate International Women's Day, which is a global celebration of the economic, political, and social achievements of women. This event actually took place for the first time in March 8, 1911. Many countries around the world celebrate this holiday with demonstrations, educational initiatives, and customs such as presenting women with gifts and flowers. The United Nations has sponsored International Women's Day since 1975. When adopting its resolution on the observance of International Women's Day, the United Nations General Assembly actually cited the following reasons to recognize. So they said the fact that securing a peace and social progress and the full enjoyment of human rights and fundamental freedoms require the active participation, equality, and development of women, and to acknowledge the contribution of women to the strengthening of international peace and security. So that's a big statement, but it's the reason why we have the United Nations that's sponsoring International Women's Day. So during this live, I want to share some possible news stories with you, stories from, important women, facts about important women who might not always get the level of attention they deserve throughout history. So I want to name off a couple of leaders. One of the first leaders that I want to bring is Sandra Day O'Connor. Sandra Day O'Connor was actually appointed by Ronald Reagan as the first female justice of the Supreme Court of the United States in 1981. Another person I find to be particularly inspiring is Margaret Chase Smith, who was the first woman to be elected to both the U.S. Senate and House of Representatives. Smith was also the first woman of a major party to be considered for presidential candidacy. Could you imagine being the first woman in history to be considered a candidate for the presidential office? So that's amazing. One of my ultimate favorites, and I feel like I hear that there's a movie coming out soon regarding this particular leader. So Shirley Chisholm, I grew up reading a lot about her, and Miss Chisholm was the first African American to be a candidate for a major party presidential nomination. So I really am inspired by Shirley Chisholm. I hope that you all take time to research her more, but if you don't know already, but that's one of my favorites. Eunice Shriver, who was a political advocate for children's health and was also the founder of the Special Olympics. She's also, fun fact, a sister of John F. Kennedy. Yeah. All right, so those were a few leaders I wanted to mention. All women, all have contributed to American history. Love that. If you have any favorite leaders that I didn't mention, feel free to drop them in the comments. I'm curious to know if there are more that we're overlooking or that I've overlooked today. But I just wanted to bring to the table some of the people that I find particularly inspiring and that have contributed a lot to American history. From a sports perspective, we have Althea Gibson. Althea Gibson actually broke tennis color barriers when she became the first black player to compete at the U.S. Open in 1950. She became the first black player at Wimbledon. The following year as well, she also was voted Female Athlete of the Year by the Associated Press in 1957. So shout out to Thea Gibson. Definitely broke barriers for the African American community, but especially for women at that time. Jackie Joyner, who was the first woman to ever win 2 consecutive Olympic gold medals in one of the most grueling sports events, I'll say, is the heptathon. If you don't know what that is, Google it, but it's one of the most grueling sports events that, not only a person can participate in, but also a woman. In total, she won 6 Olympic medals and was voted Sports Illustrated's women's greatest female athlete of all time. So shout out to Jackie Joyner. Last in my sports category, I have Bonnie Blair. Bonnie Blair is one of the more recent people, like I would say, in recent history. So Bonnie Blair became the first woman ever to earn 5 gold medals at the Olympic Games. And that didn't change until 2010, who I think that might have went to Simone Biles now. I think that's who carries that title now. But she was the most decorated American Winter Olympian during her time. So shout out to Bonnie Blair. Science. Candace Pert. So I'm a scientist, an engineer by trade. So science is kind of like my thing. So I've heard a lot of these names, and these are some of the people who stood out to me. And in fact, my original major in college was actually physics, and then I changed it to electrical engineering. So Candace Pert is a neuroscientist who discovered the opioid receptor in the brain. And then you have Elizabeth Blackwell, who was the first woman physician in the United States. So big deal. I don't have the date or time when that actually occurred, but Elizabeth Blackwell was the first woman physician in the United States. Then we have Marie Curie, who discovered the elements of radium and polonium, and she actually coined the term radioactivity. That was something she created, and a term that the medical field still uses today. So she actually won the Nobel Peace Prize in both physics and chemistry. And then we have Florence Nightingale. I find Florence Nightingale to be one of the most interesting women that I highlight, and it's because she basically created a whole field of study, like a whole field. So Florence Nightingale she's best known for her work in ministering to soldiers during the Crimean War, as well as her efforts professionalizing nursing. So it was actually her idea to make nursing like a profession and to standardize nursing education worldwide. So like, could you imagine like just creating this like field of study, like, and actually making it a profession and pushing that out throughout the medical community. And so shout out to Florence Nightingale. I know I have tons of nurse friends, so that's a fun fact. If you have any more people that you want or women that you want to highlight, please drop them in the comments. But let's fast forward to 2021. So National Women History Alliance always declares an annual theme for women's history. So this year's theme is a continuation actually of the 2020s theme. I guess, we had a pandemic last year, so they were like, hey, we just gonna roll this over to 2021. But it's an extremely cool theme. So this year's theme, which is a continuation of last year's theme, is Valiant Women of the Vote, Refusing to be Silenced. I find that to be extremely important with all the political things we've had going on in 22 and 2020 and continuing on to 21, some of that. But I think it really brings home to like some of our civil rights activists, like these women that we often don't give credit to, like Ida B. Wells, Ella Baker, as I mentioned earlier, or Shirley Chisholm, who all champion voting rights for women and for black people. We can also acknowledge 21st century leaders like Nobel Peace Prize nominee Stacey Abrams. I'm a huge fan of Stacey Abrams, especially what she did for Georgia when it came to voting and really hitting the ground running. Love her. So her organizing skills literally helped register at least 80,000 new voters in the state of Georgia, which turned it into an essential battleground state during the 2020 election. I mean, it was the first time that we seen Georgia go blue in a long time. I don't know exactly how long, but it was a long time. The National Women's History Alliance is determined that the important roles of multicultural suffragists and voting rights activists continue to be recognized and honored. So the organization said, we refuse to allow these women voices to be silenced, even by a pandemic. So shout out to Stacey Abrams. Shout out to all the women who did big and great things in 2020 and in the past. So if you have any more, drop them. Also, I want to pose a few questions to the viewers. How are you all celebrating Women's History Month? I asked the same question about Black History Month. You know, what type of things are you doing to celebrate Women's History Month? It's actually cool because I work as a government consultant, and some of the things my counterparts do during Women's History Month is actually highlight women-owned businesses. So there are a lot of businesses that are minority-owned, and when in terms of that minority, it's actually women-owned. So if you can identify women-owned businesses, support those businesses. That's kind of how I support. I learn about those businesses. But yeah, Fannie Lou Hamer is a good one. Yes. Good. Thanks for sharing that one. And I love Ida B. Wells and, of course, Stacey Abrams. But, you know, another question I want to pose is, what stories usually get told in history? And what do you think those stories often leave out about women history? It's actually interesting because when I reread some of the older history books, and it paints a lot of historical moments from a patriotic like lens, which obviously is not good. So I feel like a lot of these stories, a lot of these women that we hear about are often missed. That's even true to the civil rights movement. We do focus a lot on the men and their activism during that time, but a lot of time we often lose sight of those women who also contributed to a lot of these big movements. So I want you all to think about that throughout Women's History Month. Where else are we missing, these monumental moments and these monumental accomplishments that women are having and contributing to our history, whether it be American history or global history? Just think about that. Also, lastly, if you have any more comments, any questions, I'm going to just scroll up to see if I missed any input. Doesn't look like it. Somebody said I'm old. I'm old too. I feel old. So I do want to remind you all that Whitman-Walker is still open for free HIV STI testing. That is by appointment at our Liz location on the corner of 14th Street and R Street, and at our Max Robinson Center location in Anacostia on the corner of MLK Jr. and Chicago Street. To make an appointment, you can call 202-797-4439. Also, another reminder, I know you're tired of hearing me say this because I'm tired of saying it every live, but social distancing is still the best way to reduce the amount of COVID community transmission. So that means you have to continuously increase the physical space between you and other people to avoid spreading the illness. That also involves wearing a mask in public, avoiding large crowds, encouraging work from home if that's possible. Speak with your loved ones, family members, friends, whoever over FaceTime instead of in person. I know that you're missing that face-to-face time, but until we're somewhat back to normal, we should probably avoid doing that as much as possible. Again, social distancing is a way to care for your community. So remember to continue to wash your hands. Also wash your sex toys for 20 seconds. Your hands too. Keep that in mind. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram at Whitman-Walker and at Real Talk DC _ to stay up to date on all things Whitman-Walker Health. I hope you enjoyed this history lesson about Women's History Month. I also hope that you continue to join us on our Instagram lives. Also, I want to thank you. So have a great Tuesday, and I hope to see you all next week.